The chunk of raw meat hit the polished floor with a wet thud and slid to a stop near Rowan Hale's boots. Laughter rolled through the great council chamber of Vorhol Spire. It was deep laughter, the kind that came from chests the size of small vehicles. Predators of every shape filled the curved benches above. Some had scales, some had thick fur. All of them had teeth. And all of them were watching the small human who had just walked in alone. Rowan looked down at the meat. He looked back up. He did not move toward it. "Eat," boomed Warlord Bracas from the highest seat. He leaned forward, claws digging into the stone of his throne. "If you wish to speak as a warrior, eat as one. Or do humans only choose soft things?" More laughter. The sound bounced off the high black walls. Rowan stepped over the meat. He kept walking until he stood at the center of the chamber, on the round stone disc where every speaker before him had stood. He clasped his hands behind his back. He waited. High Speaker Velrin, a tall reptile with pale green eyes, tilted his long head. "You do not eat?" "I had breakfast," Rowan said. A few delegates choked on their own laughter. Others looked confused. The translation made no sense to most of them. Velrin's eyes narrowed. "You are here," Velrin said slowly, "to beg for mercy on behalf of your weak little world." "I am here to negotiate trade," Rowan said. His voice was calm, quiet. "On behalf of Earth." Bracas stood up. His shadow fell across half the chamber. "Earth," he said, the word dragged out like a curse. "A water rock. A nursery for prey animals. You have no warriors. You have no claws. You have no place at this table." Rowan said nothing. "Our terms," Velrin continued, reading from a glowing tablet, "are simple. Earth will surrender 3 of its colony worlds to the hegemony. Earth will pay tribute in metals and grain for 100 standard years. Earth will accept Drakari oversight on all space travel beyond its home system." The hall waited for Rowan to break, to shout, to plead. He just listened. When Velrin finished, Rowan tilted his head slightly. "No." The chamber went still. "No," Bracas repeated. He was smiling now, and it was an awful smile, full of yellowed fangs. "The little human says no. Earth will not surrender colonies," Rowan said. "Earth will not pay tribute. Earth will not accept oversight. We came here to trade, not to kneel." The laughter that came next was not friendly. It had teeth in it. From a side bench, an old predator rose slowly. He was thinner than the rest. His scales were dull and scarred. His eyes were the color of cold steel. The other delegates went quiet as he stood. This was old Hunter Drogath, and when he stood, even Bracas paused. Drogath did not speak. He only looked at Rowan. He looked at how the human stood, how his weight rested on the balls of his feet, how his eyes had already mapped every door, every guard, every weapon in the room. Drogath sat back down very slowly. His face had changed. The amusement was gone. "There is a tradition," Velrin said, smiling now, "for unworthy speakers. A test. A simple one. The predator pit." Murmurs of approval rolled through the hall. "1 round," Velrin went on. "1 beast. If you survive, we will hear your terms. If you die, Earth gives us everything we asked for, plus 6 more colonies as payment for wasting our time." Bracas laughed. "He will not last 10 heartbeats." Rowan looked up at Velrin. He looked at Bracas. He looked at the rows of grinning predators who had already decided he was meat. "Agreed," he said. The hall exploded with noise. Roars of approval. Howls of laughter. Bets being shouted across the benches. A few delegates were already standing to leave, not wanting to watch what they thought would be a brief and messy meal. Only Drogath stayed silent. His old eyes followed Rowan as guards approached to lead him away. In Rowan's ear, a small voice spoke through a hidden bead. It was Lyra Voss, his tactical advisor, watching everything from a quiet room 2 decks below. "Rowan," she whispered, "are you actually doing this?" "Yes. I have an idea." "Rowan." "Lyra." "It's fine." There was a long pause on her end, then a very tired sigh. "I hate when you say that." The guards reached him. They were bigger than him. Of course they were. Everyone here was bigger than him. One of them grabbed his arm with a clawed hand. Rowan let himself be pulled along. As he walked past the lowest bench, he passed close to old Hunter Drogath. The ancient predator did not look at him directly. He only spoke, very softly, in a voice meant for one set of ears. "I know what you are." Rowan slowed for half a step. He did not turn his head. "Do you?" he murmured. The quiet ones, Drogath whispered. I thought you were a story. Rowan kept walking. He was led down a long, dark corridor that smelled of old blood and rust. Behind him, the hall still roared with laughter, betting on how many seconds he would last. Ahead, a heavy door opened into pure darkness. From within, something large breathed. Something hungry. Rowan rolled his shoulders once. He tested the small ceremonial blade they had given him. It was barely the length of his hand. It would have to be enough. He stepped through the door, and the light went out behind him. Sand crunched under Rowan's boots as the lights above the pit roared to life. The arena was a wide circle of red dirt and bone. Old bones. Long bones. Bones that had once belonged to brave warriors who had thought themselves too strong to die in this place. The walls rose 40 feet straight up. At the top, predators leaned over the edge, snarling, cheering, slapping the railings with thick palms. Rowan turned in a slow circle. He counted the bones first, then the dark stains on the sand, then the small grates near the floor where blood was meant to drain away. Lyra, he said softly, tell me what's coming. In his ear, she answered fast. Scarn beast. 8 legs. Armored hide. Soft tissue under the jaw, behind the front shoulders, and along the inside of the rear thighs. It hunts by sight. Bad hearing. Bad sense of smell. Eyes. 6 of them, but all on the front of the head. Good. Rowan, please don't. Don't what? Don't do the thing where you say good before something terrible. A heavy gate at the far end of the pit groaned open. The cheering above grew louder. Bets were being shouted in 3 different alien tongues. Bracchus's voice cut through them all from the highest viewing balcony. Try to scream where we can hear you, human. Then the Scarn came out. It was bigger than Rowan had pictured. Its body was the size of a small truck. 8 thick legs, each ending in claws like curved swords. Its hide was a deep red, layered in bony plates. 6 black eyes glittered above a wide, slit mouth lined with backward-pointing teeth. It saw him at once. It did not charge. It studied him. That, Rowan thought, was a problem. A smart hunter was always a problem. He held the small ceremonial blade loose in his right hand. He let his shoulders drop. He let his breathing go quiet. He had stood like this before, deep in the jungles of Earth, waiting for a tiger to make the first move. He had stood like this in burning cities, waiting for the next door to open. The Scarn did not know what stood in front of it. It only saw a small soft thing. The crowd above wanted blood. They started to boo. The Scarn took the boos as a signal. It charged. Rowan did not run. He waited. He counted its steps. 5 strides. 4. 3. The beast lowered its head to use its bony skull as a ram. 2. 1. At the last moment, Rowan dropped. Not back. Not to the side. He dropped flat and rolled directly under the charging beast, between its front and middle legs. Sand sprayed across his face. He felt the heat of its underbelly inches above his chest. He drove the small blade up into the soft seam between its plates, just behind the front shoulder, and dragged it as he rolled past. The Scarn shrieked. The sound was high and wet. Rowan came up on one knee on the other side of the pit. The blade was red now. The Scarn turned, slower this time, one front leg already buckling. The crowd had stopped booing. Bracchus was standing. The Scarn lunged again, more careful now, swiping with one massive claw. Rowan ducked under it. The claw hit the wall behind him and cracked stone. He stepped inside the beast's guard, used the back of its bent leg as a step, and ran 3 feet up its side. He drove the blade down into the soft tissue at the base of its neck. The Scarn bucked. Rowan held on. He did not stab again. He twisted. The beast roared. Its legs gave out one by one. It crashed sideways into the sand, throwing up a wave of dust. Rowan rode it down. He did not jump clear. He stayed on it, blade still buried, weight balanced, until the great body went still under him. Silence fell over the arena. It was a strange silence. It was the silence of hundreds of predators realizing, all at the same time, that what they had thought was true was not true at all. He looked up. Through the dust and the bright lights, he could see them. Bracchus, frozen halfway between sitting and standing. Velrin, his pale eyes very wide. Hundreds of armored faces, mouths open, no laughter left. Only old Hunter Drogath was smiling. It was a small, tired, almost sad smile. Trick, Bracchus finally roared. He slammed his fist down on the railing so hard the metal bent. Cheating. Some weapon hidden. Some poison. No human kills a Scarn alone. The crowd took the cue. They began to roar again, this time in anger. Rowan walked across the sand. He did not hurry. He stopped beneath the highest balcony, beneath Bracas himself. He held up the small ceremonial blade. The same blade they had given him. Nothing more. The roaring slowly died. Rowan looked up at Bracas. He looked at Velrin. He looked at every predator face leaning over the edge of the pit. All those teeth, all those claws, all that armor. He smiled. It was a small smile. He spoke for the first time since walking onto the sand. He did not shout. He did not need to. The whole pit had gone quiet enough to hear a whisper. Predators, he said softly, still bleed. The silence that followed was the worst sound the hegemony had heard in 1,000 years. Word travels fast in a galaxy full of traitors. By the time the dust settled in the pit, the recording was already on 12 different broadcast channels. By the time Rowan was led back to his quarters, half the trading stations between Vorhol and the Outer Rim were watching the loop on repeat. A small soft creature. A monster 3 times its size. A blade no longer than a hand. And a beast collapsing in a pool of its own blood while the human walked away. 3 short words played at the end of every loop. They were already being repeated in markets, in bars, in shipyards. Predators still bleed. In the council chamber, Velrin was not smiling anymore. This will not stand, Bracus snarled. He paced behind the high benches, claws clicking on stone. He cheated. He must have cheated. He did not cheat, Velrin said. His pale eyes were fixed on a screen showing the recording. I watched. There was no trick. He simply knew the beast better than the beast knew him. Impossible. And yet, Bracus stopped pacing. He turned slowly. Then we end this another way. Tonight. Quietly. Velrin did not answer for a long moment. Then he nodded once. 12 of your finest. No witnesses. No recordings. The human dies in his sleep. We tell the galaxy he choked on his food. Bracus showed his teeth. It will be done. Down in the lower decks, in the small cell that the hegemony called a guest room, Rowan sat on the edge of a hard bench and cleaned the small ceremonial blade. The cut on his arm had been bandaged. His knuckles were scraped. Other than that, he looked as if he had taken a long walk, not killed a Scarn beast. A soft tap came at the door. Then a softer voice. Permission to enter, human. Rowan looked up. He knew the voice. Come in. The door slid open. Old Hunter Drogath stepped through. He had to bend his head to fit. Up close, he looked even older than he had in the chamber. His scales were gray at the edges. One of his ears was torn clean through. He carried no weapons. He sat down across from Rowan on the floor, slowly, the way old hunters sit when they have decided not to be a threat. I am not here to fight you, Drogath said. I know. You knew before I sat down. Yes. Drogath nodded, almost pleased. The way you stand. The way you watch the door even now while pretending to clean that blade. The way your weight is on your back foot. I have only seen one species move like that. Rowan said nothing. He kept cleaning the blade. Long ago, Drogath said, before the hegemony was the hegemony, my people had a story. A warning. A whisper passed from old hunters to young ones. There was a species somewhere out beyond the dark, our elders said. A species that did not roar. A species that did not show its teeth. A species that hunted in silence, and in patience, and in the dark. They called them the Quiet Ones. He looked at Rowan with those cold steel eyes. We thought it was a children's story. A way to teach young hunters to never grow proud. Rowan finally looked up. And now, Drogath said, I sit across from one. A silence sat between them. It was not an unfriendly silence. You came here to warn me, Rowan said. Yes. Tonight. Yes. How many? 12. The warlord's personal hunters. They will come at the 3rd hour. They will use the air vents and the main door at the same time. They are very good at what they do. How good? Drogath's old eyes glittered. They have killed 240 enemies between them. None of those enemies were quiet ones. Rowan smiled faintly. He set the blade down. Thank you, Hunter. Drogath rose slowly. At the door, he paused. One question, human. Ask. Why now? Why come to us now, after all this time? Rowan looked at him for a long moment. Because, he said quietly, you stopped hunting prey. You started hunting peace. And peace is something we will not give up easily. Drogath stood very still. Then, for the first time in 50 years, The old hunter bowed his head to another being. He left without another word. Rowan touched the small bead in his ear. Lyra. Reyes. A second voice answered, sharper than Lyra's. Cool. Practical. Captain Tessa Reyes, sitting on the bridge of a small fleet just beyond Vorhal's outer markers, hidden behind a moon. Reyes here. We saw the pit fight. The whole fleet saw it. Crew is in good spirits, sir. Good. They are sending 12 tonight. Third hour. Air vents and main door. Want me to bring the fleet in? No. Hold position. Stay quiet. Rowan. 12 elite hunters. I know. In your room. I know. There was a pause. You are going to make me write a very long report after this, aren't you? Probably. Reyes sighed. Understood. Holding position. Tell me when to move. You will know. Rowan ended the link. He looked around the small cell. He looked at the air vent in the ceiling. He looked at the main door. He looked at the single candle that the hegemony had left burning on the small table, more for mockery than for light. He blew the candle out and lit it again, smaller. He took the blade. He climbed silently up onto the table, then up into the open vent above. Behind him, the small flame burned alone in an empty room. Outside, the third hour was coming. The third hour came with no sound at all. That was the first thing the lead hunter noticed as he crouched outside Rowan's door. No snoring, no breathing, no shifting on a bunk. Just one small candle burning on the other side of the metal, its weak light leaking through the cracks. He raised one claw. He flicked two fingers. 6 warriors stacked behind him went still as stone. Above the room, in the vent shaft, 6 more hunters moved through the dark on padded feet. Their leader pressed an ear to the grate of the cell. Nothing. Just the quiet flicker of a candle. The signal came. Both teams struck at once. The door blew inward in a shower of sparks. The vent grate dropped. 12 elite predators of the Drakari hegemony poured into the cell, claws out, fangs bared, eyes hot for blood. The cell was empty. The candle burned alone. The lead hunter froze. His head snapped to the door, to the corners, to the bunk, to the shadows behind the small table. Nothing. Where, he hissed. Above him, in a different vent, 2 corridors over, Rowan watched through a small grate. He had moved while they had been crawling toward his cell. He had moved through 3 vents and 1 maintenance shaft. He had moved without a single sound. He waited until the 12 hunters spread out into the corridor, searching, confused, their formation broken by their own surprise. Then he began. The hunters of the hegemony were trained to kill in pairs. Rowan knew this. He took the pairs apart first. The 2 who broke off to check the side corridor never made it to the end of it. One moment they were stalking forward, claws low. The next moment, the second hunter was standing alone, blinking, because his partner had simply stopped walking. He turned. There was no one behind him. He looked down. His partner lay on the floor. There was no blood. There was no sound. Only stillness. The second hunter opened his mouth to call out. A hand closed over it from behind. Something cold pressed under his jaw, found the soft seam between scales, and slid in. He went limp before he could even understand what was happening. Rowan eased him to the floor. He moved on. The next pair stood guard at a corridor junction. Rowan dropped from the vent above the first one without a whisper of sound, drove his knee into the back of the hunter's neck on the way down, and rolled clear before the second one had finished turning his head. The second hunter found himself alone, weapon raised, looking at empty air. He started to back away. Backing away put him close to a maintenance hatch. The hatch opened. He did not get to scream either. By the time the lead hunter realized something was wrong, 4 of his warriors were already gone. He gathered the remaining 8 in a circle, backs to each other, claws out, breathing hard. He is one human, he snarled. 1. Find him. A small sound, just behind him. A soft footstep. Almost nothing. He spun. Empty corridor. Behind him, on the other side of the circle, one of his warriors made a small choked noise and slid down the wall. His eyes were already empty. None of the others had seen anyone touch him. The circle broke. They were not warriors anymore. They were prey. Rowan stepped out of the shadow 10 feet in front of him. The small ceremonial blade hung loose at his side. His face was calm, almost gentle. Run, Rowan said. The lead hunter ran. He ran past the bodies of his warriors. He ran past the vents and the corners. He ran all the way back to the council chamber. He burst into the great hall in front of Bracus and Velrin, dropped to his knees, and could only shake. All, he said. All of them. He killed all of them. I do not know how. Bracus stared at him. Impossible. He let me live, the hunter whispered. He told me to run. Why? Because, a new voice said, quietly, from the chamber doorway, I want you to listen. Every head in the council chamber turned. Rowan walked into the great hall alone. He was not armored. He carried no fleet. He carried only the small ceremonial blade, still in his hand, still red. He walked all the way to the center of the chamber, to the round stone disc, the same place he had stood that morning. The benches above were full of stunned faces. Rowan looked up. He looked at Velrin. He looked at Bracus. He spoke softly, but in the silence of that chamber, his voice carried into every corner. I came here to negotiate trade, he said. You laughed. I came here as an ambassador. You threw meat at my feet. I came here in peace, and you sent 12 killers to my door. He held up the small blade. Send more, he said, or send peace. Choose. Bracus rose to his full height. His chest was heaving. His claws were out. His eyes burned. But behind that fury, for the first time in his long and brutal life, there was something else. There was fear. In the back of the chamber, old Hunter Drogath sat very still. His old eyes met Rowan's across the hall. He did not need to say anything. They both already knew. The quiet ones had come home. Pride is a strange thing in old empires. It does not die quietly. It bleeds first. Bracus stood in the center of the council chamber the next morning, breathing hard, eyes red with a sleepless night. Around him, every species of the Galactic Council watched through long curved screens. The story of the failed ambush had spread by dawn. The story of the human walking into the chamber alone, with a small red blade and a soft voice, had spread by breakfast. By the time Bracus took his place in the middle of the disc, half the galaxy was already watching. That was exactly what Bracus wanted. Bring the human, he roared. Rowan was let in. He did not look tired. He did not look hurt. The bandage on his arm had been changed. His shirt was clean. He walked into the chamber the way he had walked into it the day before, hands clasped behind his back, eyes calm. Bracus pointed one shaking claw at him. Single combat, he snarled. Here, now, in front of every species in the galaxy. No tricks, no vents, no shadows, just you and me. If you live, your terms stand. If you die, your world is mine. The chamber roared. Velrin stood quickly. Warlord, this is not the way of the council. It is now, Bracus snapped. He did not take his eyes off Rowan. Will you fight me, human? Or will you hide again? Rowan looked at him for a long, quiet moment. I will fight you, he said. Weapons were brought. Bracus chose a great curved blade longer than Rowan was tall. Rowan was offered a rack of weapons. He looked them over. He chose a short broken spear from a wall display, an old battered thing left from some forgotten war. The crowd laughed at it. The crowd was wrong to laugh. The fight began without ceremony. Bracus charged. He was 8 feet of muscle and natural armor, and he closed the distance in 3 strides. The great curved blade came down hard enough to split a stone pillar. Rowan was not there. He had stepped sideways at the last instant, the spear low. He let the blade pass. He let the warlord's own weight carry him forward. As Bracus stumbled past, Rowan drove the broken spear into the seam of plates behind his knee. Bracus roared. The leg buckled. The crowd went quiet. Bracus turned, slower now, favoring the leg. The blade came again, in a wide flat sweep this time. Rowan ducked beneath it. He stepped inside the warlord's reach, where the long blade was useless. He drove his shoulder into the warlord's wounded side. Bracus staggered. He swung the heavy hilt of the blade like a club. It clipped Rowan's shoulder. Pain lit up Rowan's arm. He did not slow. He moved like water. He moved like Earth had taught him to move. He had fought stronger things on Earth. Bigger things. Things with more teeth. Things in burning buildings and freezing forests and dark caves. Bracus was strong. Bracus was fast. But Bracus had only ever fought enemies who fought the way he expected. Rowan slid behind him. He hooked the broken spear under the warlord's good leg. He pulled. Bracus crashed onto his back. The chamber floor cracked under the weight. Bracus tried to rise. Rowan put a knee on his chest. He drove the broken spear down through the soft seam at the base of the warlord's throat, just above the chest plate. He did not push it deep, just deep enough. The chamber was completely silent now. So was the rest of the galaxy. Every screen on every world watched the small, soft creature pin the great warlord of the hegemony with a broken stick. Bracchus's chest heaved. His eyes were wide. His claws scraped uselessly at the floor. Rowan leaned down. His face was very close to the warlord's now. He did not shout. He whispered. "Tell them," Rowan said softly. "Tell every species watching. Tell them what you learned today." Bracchus's lips pulled back over his fangs. He tried to spit. He could not. Rowan let the spear press a little deeper. Just a little. "Say it." Bracchus closed his eyes. His great chest shook. When he spoke, his voice was raw and small. "Predators," he said. Rowan waited. "Predators still bleed." The whisper went out across the galaxy. It went to every screen, every speaker, every channel. It went to outpost markets and asteroid mines. It went to courts of kings and decks of pirate ships. It went to predator races who had not bowed to anything in 1,000 years. It hit them all at the same time. The hegemony cracked in that single moment. Not with fire. Not with fleets. With one small whisper from a defeated warlord on his back. Rowan rose slowly. He pulled the spear free. He stepped off the warlord's chest. He did not strike him again. "You live," Rowan said. "Remember why." He turned his back on Bracchus. He walked across the chamber to the round stone disk. He looked up at Velrin. He looked at every council seat. He looked at the watching galaxy through the long, curved screens. "Earth," Rowan said quietly, "is here to trade. Not to kneel. Not to give up its colonies. Not to pay tribute. Earth offers fair terms. Earth offers respect. We ask only the same in return." He paused. His voice did not rise. "If any species in this council still wishes to test that, the door is open. Walk through it." No one walked through the door. In the highest balcony, old Hunter Drogath stood. He bowed. Slowly. Deeply. The way a hunter bows only to something he has finally understood. One by one, around the chamber, others followed. Rowan touched the small bead in his ear. "Reyes." "Sir." "Bring them in." On the way. Outside Vorhol Spire, far past the moon, 12 small human ships came out of the dark. 12 small ships should not have made an empire shake. But these did. They came in clean formation. They were not large. They were not heavily armored. By the standards of the hegemony, they were almost insulting in their simplicity. But they moved in a way the hegemony had never seen ships move. Quiet. Tight. Patient. Each ship knew exactly where the others were. Each pilot trusted the next without needing to speak. Captain Tessa Reyes led them in personally. She brought her flagship to a slow stop just outside the great viewing windows of Vorhol Spire, where every council member could see it. She did not fire. She did not threaten. She just sat there, in plain view, with 11 ships behind her. That was enough. Inside the council chamber, the hegemony came apart in pieces. Velrin rose first. His pale eyes had lost their hardness. He stepped down from the high bench and crossed the floor to where Rowan stood. He stopped a respectful distance away. He bowed his long reptilian head. "Ambassador Hale," he said. The word ambassador had a different weight in his mouth now. "On behalf of the council, I withdraw all earlier terms. Earth keeps its colonies. Earth pays no tribute. Earth accepts no oversight. And the 3 colony worlds you threatened? Released. Fully. With formal apology. And the species who voted to take them? A long pause. They will sign the new accord, or they will leave the council." Rowan nodded once. Acceptable. Behind Velrin, others were already moving. Delegates who had laughed at Rowan the day before now stepped down quietly to add their seals to the new accord. Some looked ashamed. Some looked thoughtful. A few looked angry, but the angry ones said nothing. Anger without strength is just noise, and the hegemony had just learned how loud silence could be. Bracchus did not rise from where he sat against a pillar. The wound on his throat had been bandaged. He watched the proceedings with empty eyes. He did not speak. He did not need to. Every being in that chamber had heard him whisper those 3 words across the galaxy. He was finished as a warlord. Everyone knew it. He knew it most of all. Old Hunter Drogath came down from his bench last. He did not bow this time. He came to stand beside Rowan, the way an old warrior stands beside another old warrior at the end of a long day. He did not look at Velrin. He looked at Rowan. "You did not kill him," Drogath said quietly. "No." "Why?" "Because a dead warlord becomes a story. A living one becomes a lesson. Drogath nodded slowly. You think long thoughts, human. My people have had a lot of practice. The signing took less than an hour. The new accord was simple. It recognized humanity as a sovereign hunter race. It opened fair trade routes. It set boundaries. It gave back what had been taken. By the time the last seal was pressed into the document, the galaxy had a new shape. When it was done, Velrin turned to Rowan with one last question. He asked it quietly, almost gently. Ambassador, before you leave us, tell us, what are humans, truly? We thought we knew. We were wrong. So tell us, what kind of creature have we just made peace with? The chamber went very still. Every council member leaned forward. So did the watching galaxy on its many screens. This was the question every species had been asking since the pit fight, since the ambush, since the broken spear and the whispered words. Rowan was quiet for a moment. He looked down at his hands. He looked at the small ceremonial blade at his belt. He looked up. We are not the strongest, he said softly. The chamber waited. We are not the fastest. We are not the largest. We do not have the longest claws. We do not have the thickest hides. By every measurement your science uses, we are weak. He paused. But on our world, he said, everything tried to eat us. The big things, the small things, the cold, the heat, the water, the fire, the dark. We were soft. We were slow. We had no armor. We had no fangs. His eyes moved across the chamber. And we are still here. A long silence followed. It was not a silence of fear this time. It was something else. Something closer to understanding. That is what humans are, Rowan said. We are simply the ones who never stopped surviving. We are quiet because quiet kept us alive. We are patient because patient outlasted everything bigger than us. We do not roar before we strike. We do not show our teeth before we bite. We watch. We wait. And when the moment is right, we move. He stepped back. He bowed once, just slightly, to the council. Thank you for the lesson today. I hope you remember it. He turned. He walked toward the great doors. Old Hunter Drogath fell into step beside him for part of the way. At the threshold, the old hunter stopped. He pressed one clawed hand briefly to his own chest. A salute. The kind given only to a fellow predator. Rowan returned it. He walked out of the chamber alone. Outside, on the long, bright corridor that led to the docking bay, a small voice spoke in his ear. Rowan, Lyra said softly. We did it. We did. You sound tired. I am. A pause. Coming home. Coming home. He boarded his small shuttle. It rose from the docking bay of Vorhol Spire and slipped into the dark between the stars. The 12 human ships fell into formation around him. They moved together. Quiet. Tight. Patient. Behind them, the hegemony watched them go. In every corner of the galaxy, in every market, in every shipyard, in every dim bar where traders gathered, 3 small words were already passing from mouth to mouth and would never stop. Predators still bleed. The quiet ones had come home, and the galaxy would never forget.